Morning everyone, so this is chapter 8 of The Wizards of Once, the spelling competition. This was a feast of fire, so bonfires leaped high in all corners of the main hall, and a great leaping circle of fire marked out the spelling ring right in the buzzing centre of the rowdy banquet. The hall was jam-packed with wizards of all ages and sizes, happy sleeping giants dancing or snoozing ponderously on the edges of the room, and howling wolves, lumbering bears, snow cats, watching carefully in the shadows from the branches above, their tails swinging. Fiddles and horns danced through the air, playing themselves quite independently, with no visible musician in sight. In one corner of the room, Encanso the Enchanter was deep in political conversation with the other adult wizards. Swivelli, a wizard from a rival tribe, was arguing that the wizards needed to fight back against the warriors, just as their ancestors had done in the past. "The time has come for battle," said Swivelli, "and for new leader, me, to be king rather than you, Encanso." The young wizard's spelling competition was taking place in another corner. Luta had been beating everybody until Zar swaggered in, followed by the bear and the wolves and the sprites zooming overhead, stealing hats and pinching noses, and generally showing off, and within 2 seconds Ariel had zoomed underneath all the banqueting tables, tying people's shoelaces together so that when they stood up and tried to move off, they fell face forward onto the table, hopefully into something squishy and messy like stew. Time Lost turned patches off the floor into ice, and all of the other sprites were making nuisances of themselves in an equally naughty manner. "Oh, what are you doing here, Zar?" sneered Luta. "Your magic hasn't even come in yet." "I'm here to challenge you," said Zar grandly. "With what?" grinned Luta. "You don't tell me you caught your witch, did you, baby brother?" he said. He turned to his laughing friends and jerked a thumb at Zar. This loser thought he was going to catch himself a witch and steal some of its magic. Laughed the young wizards. Zar shrugged carelessly. "Maybe I did catch that witch, Luta," he said. "Why don't you try some of your spelling on me and we'll see what happens? Or are you afraid?" "Watch out," Luta warned Darkish. "He did catch something. I don't know what it was." "Of course you didn't catch a witch," jeered Luta. "And you can't do magic, little baby brother. I warned you, if you dared to enter this competition, I would annihilate you. And I will." Zar walked into the chalk circle, and as he stepped in, there was a short, sharp humming noise, and a force field of magic leaped over both himself and Luta in a thin, see-through dome hissing with power. Everyone was quiet, with that quiet where you know something is going to happen. Time Lost drew one of his wands, as did Bumbleboozle, but they couldn't help Zar now. He had stepped inside the circle. Zar was on his own. Zar held out his hands towards Luta. "Oh, you're going to do magic without a staff, are you, Zar?" scoffed Luta, and his friends all laughed loudly at this. Magic without a staff was in advanced wizard work, and only great enchanters like Zar's father could do that. "Be afraid, Luta. Be very afraid," warned Zar. "For I not only have the magic of the witch, my magic has the power to work on iron." "Oh my god," cheered all the young wizards. "Oh, really?" smiled Luta. He was going to enjoy this so much. "That's right," said Zar. "I am the boy that destiny has chosen." Confidently, Zar held his hand with the witch stain on it in front of him. "Feel the power," said Zar. "Feel the power. Imagine in your head, feel the power in your fingers." That was what the teachers always said. But Zar just got redder and redder in the face and more angry, and it was just like every other time he tried to do magic and failed. Nothing happened. Luta had been creeping warily round the edge of the circle in case the lunatic brother of his really had caught himself some extinct life form. Impossible though that was, you never knew with Zar. He had a way of making impossible things happen. But now Luta's eyes lit up. "Oh dear," crooned Luta, holding his staff lovingly in his hands. "Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, so boy of destiny, oh chosen one. Where's your scary witch magic now, then?" "The boy of destiny?" laughed the young wizards outside the circle. I don't understand, said Tsar, bewildered and furious. I am the boy of destiny. I can do it. I know I could do magic. Oh, botheration, thought Tsar. He had been so sure, what with the witch-killing motto on the sword and everything, that this must be all a sign from fate. But maybe he'd been wrong. And if this wasn't witch blood, then what was it? Oh, please don't let me turn into a werewolf in front of everybody, thought Tsar. That would be actually really embarrassing. Not for the first time, Tsar wished he had taken Caliburn's advice. He could feel his skin prickling all over, as if the hairs were about to sprout out of it any moment. You can't do magic, said Luther. But I can. Let me show you how I could do it. I wonder what I shall do first. Maybe I'll do this. He pointed his staff at Tsar. There was a flash of sheet lightning, and the white-hot heat of magic light shot out of it, hitting Tsar full in the chest so hard that he was thrown up into the edge of the invisible circle of the magical force field. Oh, bother, thought Tsar dully, picking himself up. This isn't going to plan. I'm going to turn you green, grinned Luther, shooting blasts of magic at Tsar, who turned brilliantly green as he was shot to the other side of the ring, trying not to scream as the blasts hit him like punches in the stomach, and red, and yellow, and pink. As Tsar was blasted across the spelling ring, turning violently different colours, he felt more and more nauseous, and struggled not to be sick in front of everyone. Oh, ha ha ha! Roared the cronies of Luther, and the wizard children who Tsar had played tricks on and bossed about in the past. You need to be taught a lesson, smiled Luther, and I am going to teach you a lesson you will never forget. He advanced closer to Tsar, who was now doubled up in pain, groaning. You're small now, said Luther, but I shall make you smaller. He pointed his staff at Tsar and muttered a spell under his breath. Shrink. Was the spell shrink? Oh dear, no, not the shrinking spell, thought Tsar. That really is painful, and I'm already kind of on the small side. I'd better bring out the sword. But he didn't have time before the magic screamed out at the end of Luther's staff and hit the doubled-up Tsar, and lit him up at the edges as if he were a Tsar made out of stars. Tsar stifled a howl of pain as those stars set into a vice-like grip and a pinch that began in his forehead, spread out across his entire body, as the magic tightened and pinched and compressed and crushed him, as though he were wearing a suit of armour that was slowly squeezing shut like the closing of a fist. Say I've won! Shouted Luther, backing off, to give Tsar a moment to give up the fight. Surrender! Tsar's mouth was squidged out of shape by the shrinking process, but he managed to shout, No, I won't! It came out weirdly through the shrinking, squirming of his lips. All right then, said Luther. You'll have to go smaller still. This time Tsar did let out a yell as the spell hit him in a trembling shriek of pinches and pressure, shrinking his bones down a size smaller than they were. Oh, bother. This wasn't giving him time to draw the beastly sword. Do you give up? Said Luther. Of course not, yelled Tsar. Now you really annoy me, Luther. Luckily, this made Luther stop doing magic for a second because he was laughing so hard he nearly dropped his staff. Oh, really? Annoyed you, have I? I'm so scared. So scared. So while Luther was busy laughing, Tsar was able to draw the sword. In the nick of time, for if his hands had gone any smaller, he wouldn't have been able to hold it. But he could just about get his palm around the handle and get enough grip to pull it out of his belt. And it was a moment of triumph. Tsar drew the enchanted sword with that satisfying swishing sound that swords make, and as they heard it, the gaze of the onlookers turned from scorn to surprise and horror as they realised what the sword was made of. Iron. Luther took a step backwards. You can't bring an iron sword in here, spluttered Luther. Where did you get that from, you loony? I broke into the warrior fort, lied Tsar, and stole it from right under the warrior's snooty posh little noses, and I could bring it in because it's a magic witch-killing sword. And as you will see, my magic, which has come in, can control it and enchant it. Luther shot an anxious bolt of magic at the approaching Tsar, and with one satisfying slice of the sword, Tsar cut it in half before it reached him. Was that another shrinking spell there, Luther? Better try another one, for I'm coming closer. Then the fight began in earnest, with Luther shooting hot, quick magic bolts from his staff, and Tsar intercepting them and breaking them in half so they fell uselessly to the ground as fast as Luther could direct them towards Tsar. The sword felt as if it was finally coming to life. like a freshly caught salmon in Tsar's hand, and was anticipating Luta's next move before he made it. Tsar wasn't as light as Wish, so it wasn't quite as clear that it was the sword doing the fighting rather than Tsar himself. He just looked like he had suddenly and miraculously turned into the best sword fighter in the world. The crowd was now pointing in an admiring rather than mocking way as Tsar ran around the spelling ring, carving up Luta's spell bolts, shouting, "What have you got to say about magic now, Luta?" and generally showing off. "It's working," thought Tsar, and it was every bit as exciting as he had dreamed it would be. He could hear Heliotrope saying to Leaf Song, "Whoa, fighting with a sword is kind of cooler than with a staff, isn't it?" And Leaf Song replying, "Do you think Tsar really is the boy of destiny?" "I'm a star," thought Tsar exultantly. "I knew I was a star all along, and now everybody else will know it too." And then everything went wrong. Suddenly, mysteriously, the enchanted sword began to drag Tsar rather too violently to the left and to the right. "What's going on?" thought Tsar. One moment it was as if he and the sword were one and the same, and he was in triumphant control of everything. The next it felt worryingly as if the sword were trying to escape from him. Tsar was having to hang on to the sword with both hands until, with a great plunging leap that pulled him 3 feet up in the air, the sword dragged itself out of his grasp and rocketed up through the dome circle of the magic surrounding them, which caused the entire room to explode. Boom! The force of the explosion sent magic ricocheting around the great hall in huge, violent blasts, ripping holes in the ceiling, and fireballs the size of pumpkins flew across the room. The enchanted sword, after exploding out of the magic circle, sailed up into the rafters of the ceiling of the main hall and disappeared in the direction of Tsar's room. When the smoke cleared, Tsar and Luta had been thrown onto their backs and were lying on the floor, choking and coughing. A great crack had opened up beneath Tsar's feet and split right across the floor of the room. "What is going on here?" The King Enchanter's voice was as cold as ice. Chapter 9. Encanso, the King Enchanter. The King Enchanter was a tall man, and magic had made him taller still. It was curiously difficult to look at him, for he always seemed to be very slightly changing shape, blurring in and out at the edges, but underneath the constantly changing outline of his face, where magic came and went like waves on a coastline, he was stern and unbending as a cliff. He was such a very powerful wizard that there was something very scary about him, even when he was just standing there quietly. He had one black fingernail on his right hand, and there was a story of how the fingernail had turned that colour, but no one dared ask the enchanter what that story was. 2 very large, very old snowcats settled themselves on either side of the enchanter as if they were statues framing a door. Tsar and Luta staggered to their feet like a couple of carbon scarecrows. "Tsar!" snapped the enchanter. "What has happened here, and what are you doing competing in the spelling competition?" The cold anger dropped from the enchanter's voice for a second as he asked, "Has your magic come in at last?" The enchanter's voice was eager, too eager, for it told his son how much the enchanter wanted that magic to come in. "It has," said Luta. "It hasn't," said... "Sorry, it has," said Tsar. "It hasn't," said Luta. "Well, Tsar," said the enchanter. And this time you could hear his disappointment. "Has it come in, or has it not?" "Maybe not," admitted Tsar. "Then why are you competing in this?" began the enchanter, but Luta was so cross he rudely interrupted his father. "He cheated. He's completely out of control. He went into the Bad Woods this evening with some mad plan that he was going to catch a witch and use his magic for himself, and then he tried to attack me with his Luta was going to tell the enchanter about the sword. Unfortunately, the enchanter punished him for his rudeness by sewing Luta's lips tight with magic before he got to the end of his sentence. One flick of the enchanter's little finger and Luta's mouth shot together like he had lockjaw. Ranta, Tsar's tutor of wizardry and advanced spellwork, now rushed forward. Ranta was a huge pomposity of a man, with a nose like a dignified lobster, and various quivering, outraged chins. His air of dignity and calm was disrupted by the fact he was being closely followed, not only by some very grand and ancient sprites, but also 6 small piglets oinking lovingly up at him. "I have tried to speak to you about this on many, many occasions, Enchanter," cried Ranta, "and you have chosen not to listen. This is only the latest in a long line of disobediences. In the past week your son has ridden his snow clerk up the fort flagpole, removed the flag of the wizard tribe, replaced it with a pair of your excellency's underpants. He has burned down the west part of the camp. That was an accident, objected Tsar, interrupting. I was just teasing the chimney sprites and they couldn't take a joke. Besides, he added hurriedly, it wasn't me and I wasn't there. And with this last complaint, Ranter's voice dropped to a thrilling, furious quiver that made his chins shiver from side to side, banging against one another. And worst of all, he has poured Love Never Lives potion into the pigs' feeding trough, so the pigs are behaving in a most outrageous fashion. Despite his intense annoyance with his younger son, the enchanter's lips twitched with amusement. He looked down at the pigs, gazing up at Ranter adoringly. Ah, yes. I did wonder why you had taken to having pigs as followers, Ranter. Not very dignified for a senior wizard of your standing, I thought. The pigs, spat Ranter, are not my idea. Your son has inflicted them on me. And you should not find this amusing, enchanter. Your son's disobedience and lack of magic brings dishonour on our whole tribe. What do you have to say for yourself, Tsar? Said the enchanter. You have no evidence, shouted Tsar. I am Tsar the Magnificent, and I demand a fair trial. Of course, said Encanso the Magnificent. Could you show me what you have there, Tsar? He pointed to a package that was poking out of one of the pockets hanging around Tsar's waist. Very reluctantly, Tsar took the package out of his pocket and Encanso insisted he unwrapped it. The package turned out to be a burned flag of the wizard tribe tied around a half-full bottle of Love Never Lies potion. Encanso shook out the flag. Yes. I would call this evidence, wouldn't you, when I pronounce you guilty? I've never seen that flag before in my life, proclaimed Tsar. Unfortunately, Tsar was still holding on to the bottle of Love Never Lies potion. And Love Never Lies potion has two properties. One is that if you eat it or smell it, you fall in love with the next person or animal you see. The other is that it turns from red to blue when the person who is holding it tells a lie. Encanso watched the Love Never Lies potion as slowly the liquid turned from maroon to a sort of smoky indigo. Someone must have put that flag and that Love Never Lies potion into my pocket because they certainly don't belong to me, said Tsar, carrying on lying in a hopeful sort of way. The indigo of the Love Never Lies potion darkened to black at the magnitude of this untruth. The bottle filled with smoke and shook in Tsar's hand. The cork shot off and Tsar hurriedly recorked it. But not before a fine mist of Love Never Lies potion had drenched the little piglet, sitting in a quiet but loving circle at Ranter's feet, and this fresh sprinkling made them jump to their feet again, oinking madly and making ruder and even ruder noises as they tried to get Ranter's attention. "Ah!" roared Ranter, batting away at the piglets. "Get off me! Shoo, you beastly creatures, shoo!" Only Tsar dared laugh at this entertaining sight, because Enchanter had stopped being amused. He was staring down at his younger son with thunderous eyebrows descending down over his fierce hawk eyes. You are not only guilty of everything Ranter and Luta have accused you of, Tsar. You are also a liar and a thief. Curse his beastly father. Why did you always have to make Tsar feel so small? And now you must give up these silly little tricks of yours and grow up, said the enchanter. While all these other things are just stupid and babyish, trying to obtain a source of bad magic is a serious crime that wizards have been expelled for in the past. And he should be expelled, said Ranter, breaking in with excitement. The last son of Encanso the Magnificent, king of wizards, not to have magic is shaming. It's terrible. What if the magic never comes in? We would be the laughing stock of the woods. Tsar's stomach did an uncomfortable flip. You are only saved from expulsion by the sheer stupidity of your ideas, Tsar, said the enchanter with withering coldness. Even a 13-year-old should know that witches are extinct. And if there really was such a thing as a witch out there, only a madman would try to get within 100 yards of it. Encanso pointed his finger at Tsar. Encanso did not need a staff to concentrate his magic. It blasted out with such pure intensity it was not even visible. Tsar's blackened clothes closed around him so tightly that he could barely breathe. There was a writhing snake pattern on the broken dust of the mud floor where Tsar was standing. The patterned snakes on the floor began to move around each other, and then they grew solid and slid up and off the floor and twined their ways around Tsar's legs, and now his living clothes carried him up in the air like he was swinging from the branches of a tree, and the hissing snakes turned into liquid mercury that curled around him and solidified, and turned into chains, so that he was hanging suspended in the air, twisted round with bonds. "Let me down!" cried Tsar, furious with temper. "You have gone into the bad woods against my express instructions," said the enchanter. "You sought to take magic from a dark source and bring it into this fort to cheat your way into winning a spelling competition. I will keep you up there until I decide your punishment." "I don't see why I should be punished at all," said fumed Tsar, struggling in the chains, his legs kicking wildly in the air. "It's not fair. I don't see why you pick on me all the time." "I always pick on you because it is always you who has done everything," replied the enchanter. Caliburn spread his wings and whispered in the enchanter's ears. "I would suggest patience," said the raven. "It's very important that you are patient with children and try and see things from their point of view." "I have been very patient with this boy," said the enchanter, "but I am running out of patience. The boy must learn to obey me, and if he does not, he must be punished." "The more strongly you punish him, the more he will rebel," warned Caliburn. Demendor, the ambassador to the court from Druid High Command, stroked his beard and put his finger high in the air. "A boy without magic is a sign the gods are most displeased." "That's true," said Swivelli, the rival wizard, who was always trying to overthrow Encanso. "This is another story I will tell you about later." "And maybe your failure to punish and control your son effectively is a sign you are not fit to be ruler of this tribe." "Ah, being a father and a king is harder than it looks. And everyone thinks they could do a better job than whoever happens to be the parent or the monarch at the time." "Be quiet, the lot of you!" cried Encanso, the king enchanter. "When I need your advice, I will ask for it," said the enchanter. "Tsar is merely being childish, disobedient, and showing off in front of his friends, because his magic hasn't come in yet." Tsar lost his temper. "Well, at least I am trying to do something. At least I'm trying to act, whereas you, father, you do nothing at all." The hall full of wizards drew in their breaths simultaneously. The outline of the enchanter hummed with fury. Great shooting sparks came off him, and above, the clouds drifting across the high ceiling of the room grew darker and darker, and great rumbling bursts of thunder echoed throughout. Caliburn put his wings over his eyes. Was Tsar actually trying to get himself expelled? "Why aren't we going out there to fight the warrior army?" shouted Tsar. "That was just the point that I was making," purred Swivelli, eyes alight with pleasure. "Even Encanso's own son thinks his father is not doing a good job as king." Swivelli broke off because the enchanter's finger had given a little flick, and the talk around Swivelli's neck tightened inexplicably, and it was quite a while before Swivelli could actually breathe again. "Confronting the warriors would only be a good thing if it was a fight that we could win," said the enchanter, trying to keep his temper. "Why do you think we can't win?" said Tsar. "Maybe the warriors are wiping us out anyway while we hide here in our slowly shrinking forest, twiddling our thumbs and thumbing our fiddles and doing our poxy little magic spells and love potions while they burn up our forest and kill our giants and destroy our entire way of life." Encanso, the king enchanter's eyes blazed. "We are hiding from the warriors like cowards. Why are you teaching us to be such cowards, father? Maybe you are a coward." "Silence!" stormed the enchanter, "or I will make you silent. I will sew your lips tight with magic." "Do it then. See if I care." "Enough," shouted the enchanter. "I've decided your punishment. You and your sprites and your animals shall be locked in your room for the next 3 days. "It's not enough," muttered Ranta. Tsar looked stricken. "No, father." "Then you should not have been so disobedient, should you?" said his father. "Now, be silent." "I was the one who was disobedient. Don't punish them. Punish me," said Tsar furiously. 3 days, said the enchanter, even more coldly and white with temper. "Every time you speak, I will add 1 more day." Tsar opened his mouth to speak and shut it again. 4 days, said the enchanter. "You shall not leave your room for 4 days. And if you do not listen to me and disobey me further, I will take your animals and sprites away from you forever." Tsar did care about that. Oh my goodness, he cared about that. He was silent. "I am king here," said the enchanter. "All of you in this room need to remember that. And Tsar needs a reminder of who we are." His father continued. "You have a very fine opinion of yourself, Tsar, But the truth is, you are conceited. You are willfully disobedient. You are astonishingly selfish, and the fact that you tried to obtain bad magic from a witch shows you do not understand the very basics of what it means to be a wizard. For wizards should seek good magic, Tsar. You have one last chance to be good, warned the enchanter. Be good for any more disobedience, and I will be forced to expel you and remove all of your animals and sprites. You don't care about me, cried Tsar at the top of his voice. All you want is a son who is magic. Silence! Roared the enchanter. He moved his arms once more, and all around the hall, where columns and pillars and staircases had been shattered into thousands of tiny pieces by the blast of the spelling ring, exploding with tiny dusty fragments, lifted up the floor and danced in the air like clouds of humming bees. The enchanter moved his arms as if he were conducting an invisible orchestra, and the dust responded to his instructions. It is easy to destroy, said the enchanter, but I am not like a warrior impressed by destruction. It is far harder to create, and creation is what we wizards are all about. Play, fiddles, play. The fiddles shot up into the air and began to play themselves, and the millions of tiny fragments billowing through the gigantic hall, in enormous drifts like smoke from a forest fire, danced in time to the music with such speeding energy that you could feel the heat coming off them, and warming up the faces of the wondering wizards looking up in awe. It was a very effective demonstration of the power of the enchanter, for invention was far more difficult magic than demolition, and only he could perform magic as tremendous as this. He was doing it to make a point to his son and to remind Swavelli and the other wizards gathered there of what wizards should stand for, and it worked. Even Swavelli reluctantly gasped in awe. Create, Tsar, create, and then you will impress me, finished the enchanter, his arms whirling wildly and gloriously to the tune of the music he had inspired. And in the meantime, you will stay in your room until I tell you to come out. Bam! With a final eardrum-splitting clap of thunderous magic that lit up the hall like sheet lightning, the millions of tiny pieces of dust slammed together and formed whole columns once more. The crack in the floor closed, and Tsar's clothes and the flying snake chains carried Tsar up to his room, where the door flew open and the snake chains swung him back and forth, and then suddenly released him, depositing him on the floor. The enchanters made a sign to Tsar's animals and sprites, and the animals leaped out of the hall and up the stairs, with the sprites following, and Caliburn too, with slow, reluctant wing beats. The door of Tsar's room slammed shut behind him. It won't be enough, sniffed Luta, whose lips had come at last unstuck. Ranta was right. You should have expelled him. The enchanter roared at Luta unusually, for Luta was normally his favourite son. And when I say roared, I mean he opened up his mouth and a blast of furious magic came out with such force that it actually blew Luta off his feet. And then Encanso stalked off and threw himself into his throne and put his head into his hands, thinking, what is wrong with Tsar? Why has his magic not come in yet? I have given him the best giant in my land, the finest tree, the most brilliant advisor in Caliburn, but why can't I control him? And that's where I'm leaving it today. Have a lovely day, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.